John Graham graduated college with no real training, no direction, and no one to help him. As a result, he went through 8 career detours, moving from state to state, and much of that time he felt helpless, alone, and not knowing what to do or where to go. How many of you haven't been in that place? It was not until he and his wife committed to helping others struggling more than they were that they founded the Good Samaritan Home. They found their place and a sense of purpose. You do not want to miss John's story.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
John Graham has gone from homelessness to a business owner to a published author. From a series of career restarts over the years, he was a door-to-door salesman, a children's home counselor, a substitute school teacher. My goodness, that's quite the list. A truck driver, a fireman, a building contractor, and here we go, a minister and a journalist. Welcome, John.
Carol, listening to that story, it makes me cringe, all those careers I went through.
It makes you wonder who you are, right?
Yeah, no, well, I'll tell you a story. When I met my wife, I was living in my truck at the time, and her friends all said, "Don't marry that guy." Even her minister said, "Don't marry that guy." And so now, 48 years later, I like to tell them they were wrong.
No kidding.
I've heard it said that women can look at a man and see what he could be.
Oh,
And
yes, that's good.
yeah,
That's good.
it's a good thing because I wasn't a very impressive package, at least economically.
Yes, and that's why you're on this show. Exactly, because there's
Yeah.
people that are going to relate to that story. So let's get started. Tell us your story.
Well, I grew up in the 60s, and that was a time when everybody said, go to college, go to college. Because my background was in Pittsburgh, and everybody at that time was to go to the mill. And I wanted to get out of the mill. So I went to college, except that they never told me that you have to actually have a plan or you have to study something specifically. And so I graduated with a degree in psychology, which qualified me to do absolutely nothing. So I spent the next years looking for a place that I fit, and that's why you see that resume that looks like it looks like I'm a traveling man, and I was. I went through 8 different
Mm,
careers. Uh,
yes.
some of those were good careers, like being a fireman. Absolutely nothing wrong with being a fireman. But I just didn't fit in because the truth is that much of it, unless you're in the city where there's real action, you spend a lot of time sitting. And I didn't like that.
Mm,
And so I left what most people consider to be a great job looking for something better. But the trouble is, when you eventually have a family and you have responsibility, and you've gone through 8 different careers, and you're 53 years old, you begin to wonder, will I ever find where I fit? And that's when Kathy and I, my wife, said maybe there are other people out there that are struggling
yes.
like we are.
Yes. Yes.
And we bought the oldest house in town, all we could afford, and converted that into a homeless shelter. and we opened our home to homeless people. And one thing led to another, and we started working with the adult parole authority, helping people who were coming from prison who were homeless. And that changed everything because what we found was that we were not that different from people who were coming from prison. They may have committed felonies that we never committed, but they were still struggling to find where they fit. And what helps is that we had the support of the parole officer, and we were dealing with people who many of whom were looking for a second chance. And I'll be quite honest with you, the dealing with people who've come from prison is not as dangerous as it sounds
Mm,
because you have a support system, and the truth is you have a hammer with the parole officer. So, and people tend to be motivated when they've come out of prison. And the truth is that after having been a minister for a time, I found that I feel more comfortable meeting guys in prison than I do meeting with church board members.
you said that you found that they tend to be motivated. Would you expound on that a little bit?
Well, what we found is people coming from prison recognize that they've made mistakes, but
Okay.
it's the trouble is that they don't know how to do it different. So it's like knowing you want to run fast and you work hard at running, but you don't have a direction and you can't stay on track because you've never been shown where the track is. And it's a matter of here. I give you a perfect example. We put a great deal of emphasis on maintaining your bed, maintaining your side of the room. It's a matter of respect. So I can't control what you do with your day to day, but I can control that you make your bed. And the reason for that
Okay.
is what we're not really teaching how to make a bed. We're teaching respect. And
Right.
at the end of the day, when you come back and you've tried to get a job three, four, five, six times and been rejected, and you look at your room and you see that the bed is made and your clothes are put away and it's clean, you know that you did something right that day.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's something that I heard from a Navy SEAL commander.
Mm.
He said that at the end of the day, you'll know no matter what happens during your training, when you feel like you're dying with all the work we're running you through, you know at the end of the day you did something right, and that's what makes Navy SEALs what they are. And we just applied that, and particularly with rejection being the norm, when for most people we deal with, they've learned to live with rejection. And so, what we're trying to teach them is here's something you can succeed at in small steps.
Okay, let's back up a little bit. And I want to tell you, you had the idea that it started with that. You got the idea. And was it easy to get off the ground? Like, what were some of the hurdles that you had to
Oh my.
I heard that.
Yeah, it was uh, in my innocence, in my enthusiasm. When we first opened our house as what we call a reentry house with the parole officer, the newspaper wanted to do a story on us, and we thought that's great. Local paper, we get local people to volunteer to help us. It would be a positive presence in the community. Well, truth was, it all hell broke loose.
Oh, no.
But you see it today in politics because there seems to be an isolationist attitude towards anybody who is not us. Right now, it's immigrants, but in our case, it was people coming from prison. Those people, and to be very candid, they're in a white rural community. Race factors in, and our first resident was a black man coming out of Cleveland, and because it was the only place he could go to was our house, and the people just went up in arms on it. There were
Wow.
protests, there were petitions signed, there were calls to the city council, there were ordinances passed. Before it was all done, we ended up probably in three different lawsuits with the city.
No way.
Yeah, it took us 7 years
Oh,
eventually to get through all of that. But I will say this, Carol, that it wasn't what we did in court that mattered. It's what we did on the street. I spent, and we all spent our time focusing on making our house the cleanest and the safest in the neighborhood. And even in winter, what we did was we took the snowblower and cleaned everybody's sidewalk without asking. In other words, we weren't trying to tell them what we were doing. We were showing them we were good neighbors.
well, were you up against bureaucracy or also your neighbors?
That's why today in the with the politics of the immigrants, I understand it perfectly because there's a there's an isolationist fear that we all have for somebody who's different, somebody who
Right.
didn't come from here, and you add into that a felony, and then I had one grandmother come up to me in the middle of McDonald's and say, "If one of your guys ever comes to my house, I'll kill him and I'll kill you."
Oh, gee.
I don't know if, I said, "Lady, I just want a hamburger." But that was the sort of thing we had to deal with almost on a daily basis. But to be quite candid, when you're under that kind of criticism, you look at everything you're doing and everything you're saying carefully, and you keep evaluating, saying, "Is this the right thing to say? Is this the right thing to do? Am I
Right.
in the right place?" And
Right.
it's like it's actually like being in the army where you're under fire and your life is on the line, and so everything is focused on survival, and you can't let your guard down for a minute in a positive way, and that's why I think I could see more clearly. I could think more clearly. I felt like I was doing exactly what I was ordained to do in that moment. And in the end, it worked because I like to joke about it, but it's true that those same people who waved at us now use all their fingers when they wave, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yes.
So, yeah, it was it was an exhausting experience, but
Did that change? Are you still in that place?
oh, actually, now the police department will call us and say, "We've got a guy who's homeless. Can you help?" Or
Oh, wow.
what happened was we work with the Department of Correction, and they fund us through what we call a per diem, and the adult parole authority will refer somebody, and then they will compensate us for that because we don't charge people. But that was now opened up to the local probation office. So we're actually able to save the local community tax dollars because
Oh, my
they
goodness.
are they are able to take their people who should be in jail and we can help house them. And that saves upwards of
Of
59 or
course.
$69 a day per resident. So it's a win-win. And the truth is that when if you can show that you're saving money for the community, then the Republicans and the Democrats are happy with that.
Well, my guess is that when you started this, it was all your own funding, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, I didn't have a salary for 5 years. My wife was working at McDonald's, and that's how we lived. And even when her parents died, and she got a small inheritance, we used it all to buy another house because we wanted to expand and grow to meet the need. And so we used all our own funding. And I can literally go back over my taxes, and I can show that I had no income for those whole 5 years. And even then, when we did have an income, it was never much. But that's
So,
not why we were doing it. It wasn't for money.
right. How did you stay motivated?
There's a part of me that always felt like that's one of the reasons I tried my hand at being a minister, thinking that I could help people. But I found that people in church tend to think that they don't need help, that they're the good ones, they're fine. People on the street know they need help because their life shows it. So
Okay, that's good.
yeah, To me, it's like, think of it like having an internal injury. You don't see any bruises or blood, but you're still injured. The people we deal with are obviously bleeding and they're in the same condition, but they're asking for help because they're homeless. And they're actually easier. I find ministering or helping people is easier on the street than it is in the churches. And I have to be very careful. I'm not critical of the churches. I just think that we've missed what we could be doing in the community. Instead of being in the church, we should be in the street.
And isn't that the call for all of us?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I'm so offended with the church being so political and trying to elect the right person or the right policies or the right
I agree.
judges.
I
It,
agree.
it, it should it should be the right service to the community.
My husband and I have a store in downtown in our community, and every morning when we go to work, we bring them food from our home, and they wait for that, of course, and it's thrilling. We've been
Yeah.
able to have, and this has been we've been doing this for years, and it's that it's not that they're drug addicts living on the street or whatever. They are homeless. This is such a small scale compared to what you're talking about, but I understand the mission, and I understand the desire to help others, and the rewards. They do not come with monetary value. They come with much deeper and bigger than that. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, about 60 to 80% of what we deal with are people with addictions or mental health
Okay.
issues. And and then you factor in all the family dynamics that many of us come from, and where there's no structure, and oftentimes drugs are used to self-medicate, and so and then drugs can either cause or be caused by mental health issues. So it's a never-ending cycle. So there's a tendency, I think, in the community to say, you need to get a job, as if that will simply solve it. And somebody just goes out and gets a job. But if you don't know how to even fill out a resume, see, that you don't know the basics, or you don't know, number one, things are often online. And how do you fill out a resume online? Or even when you do get a job at McDonald's or at Wendy's, it's critical that you show up on time every day. Little things that you and I may take for granted, we have to teach those small baby
Mm.
steps. That's why making the bed, coming back to that, making the bed is something you can control, and it's a first step towards a made life.
Do you possibly have maybe one or two incredible success stories like that you could share?
I'll give you two.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast-paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another. Gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
Jimmy was 67 years old when he was referred to us by the VA hospital. He had been a Navy veteran long time ago, but he was schizophrenic, and he was convinced that he was James Bond when he was off his medication.
Mm.
And when they found him in the middle of winter in his truck that had broken down, freezing to death, and they called us and said, "Can you take him?" And we agreed to, as long as he was on his medication. And he stayed with us a week, 2 weeks, a month, a year,
Ah,
14 years.
oh my word.
And he died just, I think, 2 years ago when he was 81 years old. And what he said to us was, this was the only home I ever had.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And Jimmy was you know, we had a little apartment that he would rent on his. We had a program we set up where people could stay long term, and he had his own little apartment, a bedroom, a living room, and it was. He could even sit on the porch, and the only thing he ever wanted to do in life was smoke cigarettes. So he would sit on the porch, and you could see him smoking and smiling. So,
Oh my goodness. That's awesome. Thank you. And another one.
well, the other one was at the opposite end of the scale. Walter was 16 years old when he was incarcerated, and he spent 9 years in prison, 2 years in juvie, then the rest in adult prison. And he came to us homeless when he was 26 years old, I believe it was. And he stayed with us. We were able to connect him to somebody who hired him to work in a vineyard, and he stayed there for upwards of 10 years and worked his way up, and he became a winemaker in this local vineyard. And then he found another job that paid more. And here's what he did. He bought a house. He got married, bought a house in our neighborhood. And then just 2 months ago, we hired him to work part-time with us as a night manager. So he's come full circle because he was a
Wow.
resident, and then he was a renter, and then he was now a homeowner and a member
Wow.
of our staff. Yeah, it's one of those times when you feel like you're making a difference with somebody like
No
Walter.
kidding. You at 75 published your first book. Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about that experience. And the name of it is Running as Fast as I Can. So share that experience with us and what the book is about.
One thing I found when I was going through the legal issues, I would go into the city council and I would present all the facts about reentry and second chances and how important it was to help people get a second chance and start over. And everybody would glaze over because the recidivism data just didn't connect. I like to compare it to Titanic. If I were to tell you that I'm going to give you a documentary about lifeboat safety, you would say, "No thanks. I'm going to go. I'm going to go outside for a while because nothing's so boring as a documentary on lifeboat safety." But what if I told you Jack and Rose will be on the boat and it's going to be a tremendous love story?
Mm,
You would sit down, and today we're still talking about Titanic. So what I did was I said, how do I tell the second chance story in a way that people will read it like we watched Jack and Rose? And so I came up with this story. It's fictional, but it's a story of Daniel Robinson, who grew up in poverty and abuse, much like the people we deal with. And he made a series of mistakes throughout his life until he met Kate. And together, the two of them learned how to lean on one another and restart their broken lives. And the truth is that when I first published that book last year, the reader reviews started coming in, and what I heard was, "That's me. Daniel is me, or Kate is
mm,
me,"
mhm.
and so in the process, we've gotten 43 literary awards for that story, and
Really?
yeah, it's done extremely well. But I will tell you that I took 10 years writing it. It was no easy book because it's not about me necessarily, but it's about my experiences and
Right,
your experiences
right.
and Walter and Jimmy and all of us who need a second chance. And it was to me it was like giving birth to something I've been carrying for years and years, and I just couldn't wait to get it out. It was a lot of work. But when I was done, I felt like I had the story I wanted. And to be honest with you, Carol, today, whenever I read something from the book, I still get emotional over it.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Your next book. Do you have another book coming?
Well, I keep hearing what happened to Daniel. Tell us the rest of the story, because Daniel. The story ends with an epilogue where Daniel is talking to his now deceased wife. He's 60, 70 years old, and he's saying, "I'll be with you soon, Kate, because my cancer has come back." And I just want to tell you how the kids are doing. And he talks about he describes to his deceased wife what's happened in his life. And the question came back from readers, well, what happened? Tell us about the kids. Tell us where he went. So what I started working on was a book called Requiem, which is a memorial for the dead. And it's about how we impact people, how we can change lives, how our life can make a difference. And so I want to continue that emotional connection I have with my readers.
And your first book, who should read it?
I would say, well, what I'm hearing is even though it's technically about a male protagonist, it's actually a story that women are relating to as well, because anybody who feels like you've come from any sort of rejection, you've come from any sort of abuse, or you've come from what I call being behind in the race. There are some of us who we're trying to catch up to people where we don't even know where the starting line is because we've never been given the tools.
Mm,
And even though we're running as fast as we can, we simply can't catch up. And so I would
mm,
say if you believe in second chances and if you want a Kleenex worthy story that both men and women can relate to, I would say this is a story for you. But it's very emotionally raw and intense. And it's not something it will make it to the Lifeline channel. It's yeah, it's a tough story, but it's very
okay.
realistic. And
Okay.
I think in today's culture, people are looking for a second chance story of hope,
Yes. Yes.
and that's what it is.
Thank you for that description. Would it make a good gift book?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Uh, because the thing is, Daniel spent much of his time. He was homeless for a time in the story, and maybe you and I haven't been homeless as and such, or my readers haven't been. But how many people feel like they're caught in a corner in a job or
Mm,
in a relationship where they feel like they're trapped and they just don't see a way out. And even publishing the book, it was rejected 200 times by traditional publishers.
oh, so what did you do?
I found an outcast publisher who dealt with outcast stories by outcast writers called Don Quixote Press. And from the moment it hit the press, when it hit the stand, the story took off. And I think that's a model for the people that you and I are talking about. If given a chance with enough persistence, you just keep trying one more time. Why should a book about
Right.
an outsider be accepted by insiders? It's accepted by outsiders. Like,
Mm,
and I
mm.
consider myself to be an outsider.
So, is there anything that we did not cover that in any area that you would like to share?
No, actually, I think you've done a good job.
Okay. John is very familiar with second, third, and fourth chances
Yeah.
that many of us need to reach our goals. It is in developing what he calls, I love this, calloused hands and a tender heart along
Wow.
the journey. Anything to add to that?
I went back to my high school reunion and I saw all those beautiful people that I went to school with who were so successful and they did all the things I couldn't even imagine. And I look at them and say, they did things so easily. I realized that what I went through, the struggles I went through, and the all the bruises and the issues have made me far more, I think, developed or compassionate. And I'm able to see and feel things that because of my wounds and because of my mistakes, that the people
Mm,
who seemed to do so well so early on could never even imagine. And so uh, when they have a setback, when something happens, say for example, your job is cut, and here you are at 35 or 45 or 55 years old, you lose your job, you're devastated. But what happens in my life, I've been through so many of those hard times that I'm able to get up and get on to do something else again,
Good.
because that's where
Good.
the calloused hands come from.
Mm,
And you only get calloused hands by making mistakes.
that's
And
right.
so I don't regret my mistakes. It's just sometimes I regret uh, the people I've hurt along the way, probably more so.
Another thing that you said that I appreciated was that, and it's a message of never giving up, and you're never too old, and it's never too late. And that is, you were 75 when you
Yeah.
published your novel.
I was 53 when I started Good Samaritan Home. I was 65 when I started writing the book, and I wrote again and again and again. I went through 24 different versions to get it right, and then the rejection. So it was 75 when I finally published it, and now I'm 77 and I'm starting the sequel. And the idea is that it's not your age, it's when you quit. It's when you quit trying. That's when you get old.
Right. I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah.
100%.
Sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I have to write something down because I got an idea for a sentence I'm working on. And so here it is, 3 in the morning. I'm laying in bed writing in my phone tablet because if I don't write it down, it's gone.
Right. Oh my goodness. You're preaching to the choir there.
Oh, that's true. In fact, I walk daily, and sometimes I'll be walking. I'll get an idea, and I'll grab my phone and make a voice memo,
Right.
because if I don't do that, that idea is gone. And so I'm sending myself these memos the whole time I'm
Yeah,
walking.
that's cool. I'm glad somebody else says that too.
Well, the trouble is, I've walked into parked cars when I was.
Yeah, that can happen for sure.
Yeah, I don't tell anybody that.
Well, you just did.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I thank you, John. This has been uplifting for sure, encouraging, motivating, heartfelt. And to me, that's what this program is all about. People who need that boost, who need that
Mm.
encouragement, comes from people who have walked the walk, who have been down that road. And so your message, I believe, is loud and clear and definitely timely and definitely motivating, as I said, and encouraging to someone. And I know that the type of man that you are, if you reach one person, you feel like you've reached your goal.
There's an old hymn I grew up with in church. It says, "If I can help somebody as I pass along, then my living shall not be in vain." And
Very good.
I think that's something for all of us, that
Yes,
we live
yes,
in the wealthiest country in the world, and we have an obligation wherever we go, whatever we can do to help somebody.
I agree. Thank you. And thank you again, John, for being on. Never,
Oh,
ever
my
give up hope.
my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me here.
Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.